In April of 1834, the city of New Orleans woke up to find the most beautiful house on Royal Street on fire. The owners, a wealthy doctor and his wife, refused to let anyone inside. They begged the firemen to save the silver. They did not mention the people in the attic. By the time the firemen broke the door down, it was already too late for 2 of them. By the time the city found out about the rest, 4,000 of its citizens were standing in the street outside. What the city had wanted to do that afternoon, in the end, the city did not get to do. She was already gone. Or, almost everyone, almost 200 years later would tell you she was not. Tonight, I open a name that the city of New Orleans, almost 200 years later, still does not say out loud after dark. Her house is still standing. It is still empty. The last housekeeper hired there walked out a few years ago without telling her employer why. Her name was Madame LaLaurie. They called her the mistress of the mansion. This is case file number 6. The fire started in the kitchen on the morning of April 10, 1834. Within an hour, half of the French Quarter was on the street. Madame LaLaurie was on the balcony, calm, beautiful, beautifully dressed. She directed the volunteers to her silver. She directed them to her paintings. She did not direct them to the kitchen. A judge in the crowd noticed this. He pushed past her. He walked into the kitchen. He found the cook. The cook was very old. She had been kept by the stove on a length of iron for longer than the firemen wanted to ask. She had started the fire herself. She told the judge, when he freed her, that she had done it because anything was better than what was upstairs. The judge asked her what was upstairs. She told him that the people who went upstairs did not come back. The judge climbed the stairs. Madame LaLaurie tried to stop him. She said the upstairs was hers. She said it was private. She said she did not have the key. The judge took an axe from one of the firemen and he broke the door open himself. What was on the other side of that door has been written about for 190 years, and the writers have never agreed on the words. The newspaper that ran the story the next morning called it the most appalling spectacle of human suffering this city has ever seen. The judge himself, who lived for another 40 years, never spoke of that room out loud to anyone until he was on his deathbed. He said only one sentence about it. He said, "I should not have opened the door." There were 7 people in the room. They were all alive. None of them, the judge later wrote, looked like they believed the door had finally opened. The first one was a woman. The firemen could not look at her for long. They went and stood on the other side of the room while the judge helped her down. The second was a man. The judge, on his deathbed, said the man on the floor was the worst thing in the room. The doctors who came that afternoon said the same thing in their own way. He did not say why. He could never say why. The third was a woman who had been kept in a small enclosure. The enclosure was small enough that no one who saw it spoke about it again. When the firemen tried to help her stand, she could not. She had been in there too long. The room she had lived in had become the only room her body knew. The fourth was near the center of the room. The reporter from the New Orleans Bee wrote one sentence about her and asked his editor not to print it. The editor agreed. The reporter, 3 weeks later, asked to be reassigned to financial news. He stayed in financial news for the next 40 years. The other 3 had been there longer than the rest. They no longer understood time. The 2 firemen, men who had pulled bodies out of fires for a living, sat down on the staircase, and they cried. Behind the room, set into the wall above the stairs, was a small round window. From the outside, it looked like decoration. From the inside, the judge wrote, it looked like the only thing in the house that had been watching. The judge already knew the name of the woman who had done this. He knew it because everyone in New Orleans knew it. She had thrown the largest parties in the French Quarter for 25 years. She was 47 years old, beautiful, charitable, devout. The Archbishop himself had taken her communion the previous Sunday. She had also, the year before, been accused of something the neighbors had seen from their windows but never written down. The court, when it called her to answer for it, fined her $300, the price of a dinner party, for unusual cruelty. Within a month, the same servants she had been forced to give up were back inside her house. The well at the back of her courtyard was filled in that week. The neighbors did not ask why. The neighbors stopped calling the police after that. Some of them still went to the parties. They said her house was quiet during the day and loud at night. They said the loud was not parties. They said the sound came from the top floor, behind the small round window that nobody could see into from the street, and that the sound was something they could not describe, and that they had stopped trying. They said the carriages of doctors arrived at her side gate sometimes and left before dawn, and that the doctors who arrived at her gate were never the same doctor twice. They said her husband, the French doctor, had not been seen in public in 3 months. They said the round window, late at night, sometimes had a candle behind it. And they said the candle never moved. The judge, when he opened the door of the attic, understood why. By noon on April 11th, the entire city knew. The newspaper had run the story in its morning edition. 4,000 people came to the courthouse jail to see the 7 survivors, who had been carried there for safety. 2 of them did not live through the afternoon. The others would not eat. They barely seemed to know where they were. The doctors who tried to help them at the Cabildo did not finish that day. The work was not what they had been trained for. By 2 o'clock, the crowd was outside the LaLaurie mansion. By 3, they had broken in. By 4, they had taken the house apart with their hands. Doors, marble, chandeliers, anything that could be torn out was dragged into the street. They went into the attic, and they stood in that room, and they did not know what to do, and so they tore the room out too. They wanted nothing of that house left standing. While the mob was inside, a black carriage came up Royal Street very fast with the curtains drawn. The driver was the LaLaurie's own coachman, a man named Bastien. The carriage went around the back and out the side and down toward the river, and the mob did not see it leave. Inside the carriage was Madame LaLaurie, her husband, the doctor, and one small leather case of jewelry. The mob found Bastien on the lakeshore 3 hours later, alone. By morning, there was no driver left to question. Nobody saw the LaLauries again. The carriage left. The driver was found. After that, there was no record of her death, no record of her burial, no proof in any city she ever lived in that she died at all. In 1924, a copper plate was found in an old cemetery in New Orleans with her name on it. The grave underneath the plate, when they opened it, was empty. In the decade that followed, 2 other graves with her name were found in 2 other cemeteries in the city. All 3 were empty. She has been officially missing for 190 years. But every story that says she escaped has the same problem. The house kept behaving as if she had never left. The mansion was rebuilt in 1838. The new owner closed the gap in the roof, painted every wall, replaced every floor. He left only one part of the original house standing. He did not know how to take it out: the small round window on the 3rd floor. The first owner of the rebuilt house lasted 3 months. He sold it for less than he had paid. The second lasted 6. The third did not even finish unpacking. It has had 11 owners since. None of them have stayed. In the 1870s, the house was a girls' school. The students kept waking in the same hour of the night, all of them at once. When the teachers asked them why, the girls all said the same thing. They said the woman. The school closed inside a year. The students, before they left, drew pictures of her. Every picture had her standing at the same window. 20 years later, a man rented a room on the 2nd floor. He was found in his bed 3 weeks afterward, and he did not get up again. The neighbors said, in the inquest, that for the last week of his life, he had been afraid to sleep. He had told them, the night before, that there was something in his room that was not done with him yet. The room he had rented was directly below the round window. In 1893, when the second owner began renovating, the workmen pulled up the floors of the 2nd story. What they found underneath the floorboards has never been entered into any official record of the house. The marks on the underside of the floorboards did not look like they had been made from above. By the time the city stopped counting, nobody agreed on how many people the house had kept. Nearly a century later, the actor Nicolas Cage bought the mansion. He sold it within 2 years. He has never, in any interview since, said why. The only thing he said, once, was that he no longer believed a house was an empty thing. The
The most recent person to walk out of the house was a housekeeper, hired to clean it twice a week. On her fourth day, she heard chains in the upstairs hallway. She turned around, and at the end of the corridor was a tall man standing perfectly still, as if he had been waiting there for years. She told her friends, after, that she had not been afraid of the man. She had been afraid of what was behind him. Behind him, on the wall, was the small, round window. And from the inside, in the middle of the afternoon, there was a candle behind it. The candle was not moving. She left her cart in the hallway. No one has been back for it since. The mansion is empty tonight. It has been on the market, on and off, for 190 years. Nobody is buying. She walked out of New Orleans on the night of April 11th, 1834. That is what the records say. But there is no grave for her. There is no body. There is no proof in any city she ever lived in that she died at all. The carriage left. The driver was found. The leather case of jewelry has never surfaced in a single auction on a single continent in 190 years. Some, in those early years, said it had not been her at all. They said the doctor from France had been doing something in that attic that nobody in the city had words for yet, and that she had been the one still alive when the door came down. In the French Quarter, they will tell you, if you ask the right people, that she came back. That the night she came back was the night the new owner finished rebuilding the house in 1838. That she went to the third floor, and she sat down at the small round window, and she has been sitting there ever since. You will be told not to walk past the house after midnight. You will be told not to look up at the third floor window, the small round one on the left. And on certain nights, when the air is right, you may still hear something upstairs, calling out for the door to be opened. And on certain nights, you can hear someone on the inside, very calmly, telling them no. Case file number 6. Closed. But one question is not. Did she leave the house, or did the house keep her? I cannot answer that tonight. But you can answer something for me. In your town, in your family, in the house at the end of the road that nobody walks past after dark, there is a name nobody speaks, a door nobody opens. There is also, perhaps, a window. Leave it on my desk. I will not answer, but I will read. And the most haunting one, I will open in the next file without your name. And while you decide, look back at the third floor window of the house on Royal Street, the small round one on the left. Look carefully, and if you see a candle, do not stand and look back.